Hello everyone and welcome to my living room, and today I'm going to show you how to set up a still life composition. So for this you'll need a variety of objects, and then I'm going to explain how to set it up effectively. Now this still life composition could be used as a photographic piece in itself, or you might want to use this work as an image that you create drawings and paintings for your expressive work. Okay, so what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm going to tell you about the setup, what you need to take a good photographic composition piece for a still life. So what we need, first of all, is find a nice place where you can take this photograph, where you have a plain background and some kind of surface. Okay, that could be a table, it could even be the floor, it could be a great big box. Now if you're using a box, you might want to cover it with a sheet, in case there's any text or logos on it that will distract from your composition. So I've moved my table right up against the wall here, and that's given me a good setup that I can use here. Now of course I want to look around this setup and make sure there's no other information that's going to distract from my composition here. So for example, the painting that's just crumbing in from the top of the screen there, I wouldn't want that in my composition piece, because it's not to do with my theme. So basically I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and that means I won't see that painting there. So first of all, we've looked at the surface and having a nice plain background. Next I'll tell you about the lighting that you want to use for this. So basically you don't have to do this with lights. If you're taking the photograph during the day, which is best, you can just use the natural light that's coming in from the room. But the important thing is where that light is coming from. So I've pushed my table right up against the wall here. Usually this table sits against my window, okay? But that's not going to work for my composition, because that would have meant that the main light source would have been behind the objects. Okay, so that's the main thing you want to avoid. What you want to do is place your surface, your objects you're going to take the photograph of, in a location in the room where either the light is coming straight on, okay, onto the objects here, or it's coming from the side. Either side is fine, but what you want to avoid is the light coming from behind. Now the reason why we want to avoid that, if the main light source is behind our objects will appear dark, we'll lose some of the details and the lovely textures, and even highlights and things like that, that you get when the light is coming from the front or from the sides. Okay, so that's our setup with our surface, our background and our lighting. Next we'll talk about the objects themselves. So I've asked everybody to think and consider a theme for your still life. So obviously we've been looking at fruits and vegetables, so that must be a main element of this composition. Now after that we're starting to bring in other objects that help describe our theme. So for my theme I've chosen a Japanese dinner. So I've collected some things from around my house that I thought could be used in this Japanese dinner theme composition. Okay, so as well as the objects matching the theme, you also have to think about the visual elements for when you're setting up your composition. So for example, shape. The first thing I'm thinking about is shape. I'm wanting to have a variety of shapes within my composition. For example, I've got tall objects, I've got short objects, I've got long objects, I've got objects with interesting profiles, and so that shape has been considered. The next thing I thought about was colour. So I've got obviously some greens from my vegetables, I've got these kind of browny sort of wood colours from the bamboo mat and steamer. And then to give some brighter colours, just a few hints of brighter colours, I've got some nice coloured origami papers here. As well as that, I've thought about texture. So for example with this mat here, it's got a lovely texture, and that's going to add a nice quality to the work there. And so that should basically cover most of the visual elements that we need to think about. So we've looked at our lighting already, we're thinking about shape, we're thinking about colour, and we're thinking about texture. Okay, so what we're going to do is move on and zoom in on this still life here, and I'm going to show you how to set it up to create an effective still life. Now, I've gathered quite a few objects. I might not need them all. You don't have to put everything into your composition, but it's a good idea to start with more and then start taking them away, reducing it down, and you'll find sometimes less is more, as they always say, to get a really nice composition here. Okay, so let's move on. I'll show you what to do for setting this up. Let's get started. So you can see here that I'm starting with my flattest objects, and then I'm building up my other objects on top of them. Now, if you're using any kind of textiles, this is a good opportunity to add pattern into your composition in the base layer there. So for this composition, I'm going for a kind of diagonal composition technique, starting with my taller objects on the left side, and then working down to the shorter objects on the right. You could also describe this as a descending scale, or even an L-shaped composition as well. So I'm also taking into consideration about how I can lead the viewer's eye around the composition. So that's what I'm using the chopsticks for. So the chopsticks are going to actually, after the viewers reach that bottom corner, the chopsticks are then pointing in the direction that I want them to start looking in again when they reach that point, and guide them back into the centre of the image here. So I've also thought about the balance of this composition. So there's quite a lot of objects, quite a lot of information in the foreground and in the lower half of the composition. And that's why I've taken the shot from quite a low angle, and I'm looking straight on. And what that's done is it's left this nice kind of blank area in the background. So we've got a good sense of balance between this kind of busy area in the foreground, and then the upper half of the composition is a bit quieter and calmer. Okay, so that will really help attract the focus onto your objects there. I've also done a little bit of experimentation with lighting, just moving a simple desk lamp around the room to see how that affected it, but actually found the natural light was the best.